Hello. How's it going, folks? So I just realized that my phone was not showing me the chat. So no big deal. Story of my life. But if anybody, I'm going to just take like 5, try and see if I can get some folks back on here to be able to chat if they're interested in chatting. If we can't, it's no big deal. But chalk it up to me learning how to YouTube, I guess. I'm a little bit cheesed about it, but let's see what we can get going on here. So, for now, whatever. I'm just going to answer some of the questions that we had in the previous chat. Let's see if I can get that up. I appreciate everybody's patience and to everybody who was hanging out with me in the last chat. It's nice to see that I've always got people who are joining me and being a part of these chats as they come along. So let's see. I'm going to see if I can get the live chat from the last video. I don't think it's going to let me. So I guess it is what it is. If anybody is here, I'm just going to take 5, chill out for a moment, and see if anybody actually pops up on my chat as we go along. Hello, folks. I think one of the questions that was asked was how long it took me to get comfortable with talking about astrology before I came on and started doing it on my own channel. Took me a good little while. I'd say it probably took me about like a couple, like I was studying astrology for like 5 years before I actually came on. Hello there, Natavan Quilyeva. So I just did a video talking about, hey Bae, I just did a video that you guys can watch. It was me talking about how to start an astrology YouTube channel. The whole time I was going through, my phone was not showing me the live chat questions. Hi Irene, nice to see you. Now I'm on here and I'm hoping that like we could take at least a little bit of time so I can actually answer some of the questions, because I ended the stream and then it showed me all the questions that were happening and I was like, oh no, I missed everybody's questions. So if anybody has any questions for me now, in terms of what we talked about throughout the live stream, you guys can feel free to ask them again or just ask any questions in general. I'm down to hang out for like a little bit more. I've kind of got the day here. Eventually, I will be discussing, I'm going to go on Fiona Marx's channel, and we're going to talk about Taylor Swift's chart. I've been tapping into Taylor Swift's chart, seeing what I can kind of find in there in terms of things that would be worth talking about for me. But as for right now, if anybody has any questions, and it's okay if not, I just kind of wanted to come in and sort of give us the opportunity to have a little chat about any questions, because I felt like I shortchanged everybody in the last video. Thank you very much, Natavan. So if anybody has questions about the birth chart or about anything related to starting a YouTube channel, you feel free to ask me now. So Irene has already made a good point. My friend Irene Mack was always here and hanging out with me when I do my astrology stuff. Irene says, I think in order to be an efficient astrologer, it has to be the right brain, experienced and intuited. There are way too many heady, unexperienced astrologers. So I wonder if you mean like the right brain, Irene. Like when I think of the right brain versus the left brain, I think of the left brain is more analytical and the right brain is more intuitive. And if that is what you mean, Irene, I want you to consider that you're really going to need both. You're going to need both sides of the brain. It's a good question. And I would say that there's many people on YouTube who are too heady, who are in the statistics, they read a million things out of a million texts and they don't know how to integrate it into a lived human experience that's practical and useful. But there are also plenty of people who go by feel, go by flow. And if they haven't done a lot of studying, if they haven't done a lot of the heady, analytical, left side brain stuff, then they might as well just be shooting the shit. And this is why we need a balance of both. Because there are some times where, as a YouTuber, it really depends on the intent and the intention. You know, like, I could listen to Vic DeCara talk about Mars in Taurus. And he's going to go by feel, but he's also going to go by his specific data that he's moved through about Mars and Taurus. Now, if I go and ask somebody else, if I listen to a video about the KRS, Kapil Raj from KRS, if I hear him talk about Mars and Taurus, he's going to have different information to talk about. He might get more into the nakshatra. He might get more into, what does it mean what is Mars doing to Taurus, not just what Taurus is doing to Mars. Both of them are using their intuition, and both of them are coming from different sets of data. But I trust that they have done the left brain thing. So this is my answer to Irene, is that I think it is a combo, Irene. You got it. Both are definitely needed, and it's interesting to say that the left brain is dominant in the world of astrology. I understand. I'd be curious to digest that for myself. But both are needed, Irene, and that was a good question. Now, Nadavan is asking, I would like to ask which placement would be good for Venus in the 12th house. If you mean by sign, if you like Nadavan, I've done a video series talking about Venus in the signs. Because Venus in the 12th house, no matter what, the houses are your internal experience of the facts of Venus in its sign. Venus in the house is your internal experience of the facts of Venus in its sign. I had to say it twice to ground it in myself. So Venus does happier in certain signs and not as happy in other signs. In the Vedic system, we go by dignity, which is if Venus is in the sign of a friend, that's Mercury and Saturn, then Venus is going to do well. If Venus is exalted in Pisces, it generally does well for the most part. And the closer Venus is to Pisces, the happier it's going to be. It's not going to be happy in Leo or Cancer because the Sun and Moon are the main enemies of Venus. It's going to be neutral in Mars signs and neutral in Jupiter signs. So the Venus in the 12th is going to be expanded on based on whatever sign it's in. Venus in the 12th in the sign of Cancer would be difficult. Venus in the 12th in the sign of Capricorn would be much happier. And the 12th house loss would actually bring strength and goodness. Even though the 12th house is considered loss, it's usually material loss for spiritual gain. That's usually how that works. Misty Williams has asked, do I use solar return charts? And the answer is no. There are many things to learn about in astrology. I've mostly been in the Tropical Vedic world where they do use solar return charts. But I've mostly been focused and obsessed lately with Rahu and Ketu. Those two are such a big world. It's the key part of everything in my interpretation now. So that's what I've mostly been focusing on, Misty Williams. I hope that answers your question. Gunmetal Crow has asked, do you think confidence is important to start a channel, or is it not something to worry about? I think confidence comes. I think that if you're worried about confidence, then it's almost, and I'm not making fun of you, anybody here, Gunmetal Crow. If you're worried about confidence, that's like, it's kind of almost like it's like an acid that melts the container that holds it. Like, how do you build confidence if you're worried about confidence? How I'd say it is that, courage is not a lack of fear. Courage is acting despite being afraid. And the more that you move yourself through talking online, talking in your YouTube channel, I mean, this is coming from a Leo rising. Like, I've always just been black and just run right out there and do the thing. But I'm much more confident now than I was when I started, even though it might not look like it. At some level, you do got to fake it till you make it. Just like with a musician going on stage, you start to play your instrument, and at first, nobody feels perfectly confident when they first start. But how else do you get to the level of confidence except by going out there and sucking for a while? I've got plenty of videos that I made at the beginning that I'm not confident with, I don't feel happy with. But, you can always just put them as unlisted. You keep the views. You don't necessarily delete the video, so nobody can find those old videos of mine that I'm not really proud with or that I'm not happy about. The aesthetics weren't right. I could tell I didn't know what I was talking about fully. But this is why, to answer Gunmetal Crow a little bit, thank you, Irene. God bless you. I appreciate you. Irene just tossed me $10. I appreciate it so much, my friend. One of the reasons that I say that it's nice to just jump out there and talk about, read texts. That way you're just learning to go on camera and talk with people about the texts that you're reading, and you can't really be wrong. Because even if the text is not a right text, it's still useful to have it on YouTube. Because people can go through it, they read this text that you find is outdated, but they still gain the information. And then they watch later in your videos and you say, I used to do this I used to read from this book and it's not my favorite anymore. But, now I would go into this. It's like they can appreciate the right information because you've shared information that isn't as good. I don't know how that sounds to everybody else, but it's never a waste of time to do an audiobook, because someone out there is going to want to read it. Even if it's a stepping stone to help them get what they're getting, they needed that stepping stone at that time. Now, Kate Altum, if you're still here with me, Kate Altum has asked, what does a double grand trine in a synastry chart mean? A double grand trine? It depends completely on... I wonder if one person in the natal chart has a grand trine and then the other person has a grand trine. And that in itself can be interesting. That's a very Western sort of concept for sure. So thank you, Kate, for clarifying. This is a very Western idea of the grand trine. In Vedic, a trine's, not all the planets give each other trine aspects. Especially if outer planets are involved, or if the nodes are involved, then this would be something interesting to talk about. But I wouldn't just say that because there's this double grand trine that it would necessarily mean anything in particular. There could be great harmony there. This is me just throwing it out there. There could be great harmony between the two people, depending on like if both of these trines are happening in the same signs, then there could be harmony because there's a shared experience there. But it might not be a good thing. For example, let's say the grand trine is happening with water signs. So that would mean that you've got, for example, let's put Venus in Cancer. Let's put Mercury in Pisces where it's debilitated, right? So Mercury is into Pisces, it's debilitated. Venus is in Cancer, it's starved by the moon, its enemy. And then let's put the moon in Scorpio. Yeah. So the reason I'm giving this example, Kate, is because all these planets don't do well in water signs. Venus doesn't do well in Cancer. Mercury doesn't do well in Pisces. And the moon doesn't do well in Scorpio. These three are in a trine, but none of these planets are happy in any of these signs. So the trine nature there, like this is coming from a Vedic perspective, the trine is kind of irrelevant, in my opinion. In synastry, there's a whole world there in itself. And the Vedic people are very big on the signs as being the ground on which any shapes in the chart stand on. I think there's a little bit too much of an obsession in the West with, kind of as Irene Mack mentioned, using a sort of like a hopeful interpretive thing where there's very simple things that you can do with synastry. The big one is the moons. Is there a harmony between the moon and the ascendant? You look at the nakshatra compatibility between two people. The elemental energy of the moons. Someone might have a windy moon, and then another person might have a windy moon based on their nakshatra. That means they both got a lot of vata, and it's not conducive to harmony. All these stuff are much simpler ways of conveying synastry. Now, two people in a relationship could be very hopeful and say, yeah, but there's a trine here. Or they could go the other way. Oh, I see we've got a square between all these things, so that must mean a bad thing. For me, a lot of that kind of stuff is not necessarily the case. Most people, in my opinion, can get along together well as long as certain key basic things are in alignment in synastry. The big ones, again, being the moons being aligned in the right way. Usually you want how it's described is that you want the distance from the woman's moon to the man's moon to be shorter. It's hard to explain, but essentially you want the man's moon to be first, and you want the woman's moon to be from the first to the 7th house from the man's moon. Once the woman's moon is past the 7th house from the man's moon, that means the woman's moon is like first, and it's generally in Vedic astrology considered better if the man's moon is first, because then he can act and the woman can be receptive to that action. There's a lot to explain there. I'm moving into territory that I wouldn't call myself an expert on. So in order to have the desire to stay with what I mentioned to Irene, which is to consider the intuitive brain as well as the data brain, I'm in an area where I don't know the data as well. So I'm going to leave that there for now. But I will say is that, don't be too hopeful about looking for shapes between charts in a synastry reading. That is what I will say. Now, I'm just looking at more of our questions here. What do you think about the transit south node in Libra conjuncting my Pluto Saturn in the 4th? Pluto squaring it. I've been going through hell. And my ascendant conjunct the north node of Pluto. What do you think about this? So Irene is saying there's a transit. We've got a transit right now. It's to the south node in Libra. The South Node is in Libra right now. So we've got eclipses happening in Libra, and that's conjunct Irene's Pluto and Saturn in her 4th house. So you've probably got Cancer rising, and you've got Pluto and Saturn in the 4th house, and Libra is there. Or it's in Libra, and the South Node is there in Libra. So there's a lot there, Irene. What I would say is that right now, the North and South Node, they're like Kundalini. They go through cycles, and they open up. Really, right now, they're opening up the opposite, which is Aries, because Aries is where the North Node is right now. If you've been going through hell, it could have a lot to do with whatever is going on in Libra. And Pluto and Saturn there in Libra. Saturn's happy in Libra, typically. It's on the 4th house, which isn't its worst place. You know, I'd have to know what else is going on, what else is aspecting that Saturn there. But generally speaking, like, you know, really, Irene, it would take a lot for me to digest your whole chart in order for me to answer a very specific question like that. I feel like that's the better way for me to be honest about that. Thank you so much, Gunmetal Crow. I appreciate you as well. Thank you to anybody who ever donates to me. I always appreciate it. And I love just being able to shoot the shit like this. Yeah, Venus is in Cancer. I think I remember you've got Venus in Cancer there, Irene. So there would really, in order for me to unfold that, there'd be a lot there. Venus often has a tough time in Cancer. And you've got the South Node is dealing with past karma right now, especially the South Node eclipse in Libra would be dealing with the karma of your Venus in Cancer in the 1st house. It's dealing with past life karma, sweeping out the leaves of what is there in the 4th house for you, in order that you can, you know, it's because you have a desire to deal with what's going on in Aries in the 10th house that you are dealing with things in Libra in the 4th house. And again, there's a lot there to talk about. Now, Moon Coral says, my Moon, Venus, and Saturn are in Gemini. It's giving sandstorm. I'm not sure what you mean, Moon Coral. You've mentioned that you've got Moon, Venus, and Saturn in Gemini. I don't know what you mean by it's giving sandstorm. Moon, Venus, and Saturn, that's a bit of a tricky placement because the moon, Venus and Saturn don't like the moon. And as well, the moon, so Venus is getting starved by Saturn. Venus has Saturn for a friend, but when Saturn is together with any planet, it's going to starve that planet. So Saturn is starving Venus. The moon is also starving Venus in Gemini. So that's tough on Venus for sure. It's also tough on the moon because it's being starved by Saturn. Now Saturn is delighted by Venus but starved by the moon. So altogether it's tough, really tough on Venus, and it's tough on the moon as well there in Gemini. So I don't know what you mean by sandstorm, but that would be, that's a lot of energy being wrapped up and entangled in that one place. Now, Claire has asked, I have a question about the transit of Neptune conjunct natal Mars in the 8th house of Pisces. You're a Leo rising. It's a long transit, and I wonder what can be the discussion here. Clara, if you are interested, the best thing to do, I could speak specifically to that. What I would say is go and check out, maybe I should share my screen here. I wonder if this is appropriate. Yeah, what the heck? I'm going to try and see if this is vibing here. So Clara has asked, she's had a question about the transit of Neptune conjunct natal Mars in the 8th. Right. So what I was going to say is I did a video talking about Saturn and Neptune coming conjunct. They're going to conjunct in Aries in 2026. And the whole narrative of Pisces, of Neptune, because I did it for each rising sign. So you could look up Leo rising in those videos. It would be in the second video because I did them backwards. You'd find the second video, and then you'd go to the Leo rising, and you'll learn about what it means that Neptune has been in your 8th house for the last however many years, and that it's going to land in Aries in 2026. Basically, for me, the outer planets transiting can be very dull notes, but it's a low, slow burn. And when something like Saturn is moving through where an outer planet is, that's when the outer planets really get lit up. If Jupiter was moving through where an outer planet was, for example, Jupiter's moving through Taurus right now, and that's where Uranus is. So Jupiter is doing a lot of opening up for people's charts related to things related to finances, related to basic comfort of living, basic living circumstances, financial situation, emotional situation. Jupiter is expanding on the Uranus in Taurus stuff right now. Lots of people are been getting into crypto since Uranus came into Taurus. Cryptocurrencies and financial and technological changes. For you, having natal Mars in the 8th house in Pisces, Neptune moving through that has probably been giving you some mystical experiences related to this 8th house, to Mars, to sexuality, to transformation. And Saturn moving through there would probably bring through a lot of that, especially from now until about 2026. Kate, you said that your moon is in Cancer and his is in Leo. Ideally, they would be switched. But, usually, again, in this case, you'd want the man's moon. In this case, the man's moon is past the woman's moon. You want the woman's moon to be past his moon. So if your moon was in Leo, if his moon was in Cancer and your moon was in Leo, that would mean the man's moon. Sorry. If the man's moon was in Cancer and your moon was in Leo, that would mean the woman's moon is ahead of the man's moon. That's ideal, but don't let this bum you out from the experience of the love situation that you have right now. When an astrologer is dealing with any inquiry into love, there's 2 places that their brain has to go. Number 1, is this like really a bad relationship thing happening here? Number 2, if it's not, and a lot of the times it won't be because it's not up to him to decide, then it's a matter of letting the people find out how to find harmony within the chart that they have. Because a lot of the times, it wouldn't be quite right for an astrologer to look at 2 people who are married with children, they're living together, they're having a lot of fights between each other. The astrologer just looks at it and says, oh yeah, you guys should just break up. You guys should have never come together in the first place. You guys fucked up. You guys should have seen this coming. That would be terrible. You don't do that. What an astrologer does and says, are you guys going to stay together? All right, let's talk about how this is probably frustrating this in the other person. You got to give this person, in your case, what I would say is that it would be good to give your partner the space to initiate actions, because a man wants to be appreciated for initiating actions. If the woman is always doing the initiating of the actions, it doesn't give the man the space to do that. Thankfully, the moon in Cancer is ruled by the moon. Leo is ruled by the sun. The sun and moon are friends. So that is a positive thing. You've got to look at all the positives and try to use them to deal with the negatives in a romantic situation. And you always can, in my opinion. If anything is really going awry in a relationship, it's usually because there's basic relationship things that are wrong with the individual people that they should work out with a marriage counselor. And, an astrologer would be an adjunct to that. I hope that's a useful and clarifying thing to say there, Kate. Now let's see here. Yep, you guys can see me here. All right. I went went too far down. Wow, we've got lots of chat. Do I do natal chart readings in both Vedic and Placidus? So Kate's asking, do I do natal chart readings? I do Vedic astrology, but I use Tropical Vedic. And when you say Placidus, you must mean the house cusps. I actually use Campanus. I prefer to use Campanus. But I could use Placidus if that's what you preferred. But ultimately, I mostly do Vedic based on the whole sign house system. However, if there is a Campanus house cusp falling in an important place, I will talk about that too. I treat the cusps almost as planets falling into the whole sign system. I hope that's clarifying. Witchcraft, Gabby Turner. Gabby Turner, I think, is speaking of Irene. Yep, Irene, as well as for everybody else, you guys can always let me know if you have an interest in doing a reading with me. You can just email me. I'm going to put in my email here. Did I do it right? Yeah. astrology@dustincormier.net if anybody's ever interested in a reading. I'm booked up right now until my Christmas break. And then I will be doing charts again in February, if everybody's interested. Stephen the Jupiterian, I've left a job that no longer suits me. Will I find work that aligns with my values? That's tough to say, Stephen. I'd really have to see everything going on with your chart and with transits in order to really dig into the reasons why you're having that experience. And what it is that's going on that would be causing you to change your job. So that's a hard specific thing. Usually it's easier for me to answer questions that have specific astrological transits involved. I'm glad to hear that you love it in San Francisco. I haven't been there yet, but I would certainly love to. I live on my IC Mercury line. Moved here from New York. Was the Uranus line. Interesting. I've heard that there are place lines that relate to the chart. I haven't seen it myself, but it's interesting to me to see a question about it. Irene. Good old Irene is dancing in the fire. So I'm just reading all these the comments that we're moving through here. Saturn lessons are cool. Saturn has helped me steer my ship in the right direction. Gabby Turner says Saturn is their dominant planet. Resting I wonder if you mean resting bitch soul. That's hilarious. I love it. I love anybody with any emphasis of Saturn. I myself, I've got Rahu and Capricorn with Uranus and Neptune there. I was going out with a girl for a long time who is Saturn Atmakarika, and I loved her to pieces. I love anybody with that deep, dry, to the bone Saturn vibes. I'm in a band called Bosom, B-U-S-M, and I'm Venus Atmakarika. Our drummer is Mercury Atmakarika. And Sean, the guitarist, is a nutcase, and he's Saturn Atmakarika. He's very, he's always making sure things are all figured out financially. He can be very taking care of all the little things and ultimately making sure that we're all moving along, that we're all evolving. And he can be serious, but he's actually just an absolute nutcase, because it goes to show you the Atmakarika will change based on all the other things going on in a person's chart. Cool. I love chatting here with you guys, and probably once in a while we can just do this and just have a flowing chat like this and shoot the shit, talk about what's going on. And I've enjoyed doing this. If anybody has any more questions about, like I said, we just did a video talking about if you ever wanted to start your own YouTube channel. That's the specific topic of the day. If anybody wants to ask any questions about, like, an inspiration that I could give, advice that I could give for starting your own YouTube channel in the world of astrology, please feel free to let me know. Stephen the Jupiterian is Sagittarius rising. Jupiter in Scorpio is the ruling planet. And you've got the sun in Pisces and moon in Sagittarius. So you are very much a Sagittarius person for sure there, Stephen. I don't know what to ask. So cool. Thanks. Thanks, Grounded Extracts. Cool. Stephen the Jupiterian is starting his own YouTube channel. Very good. Okay, if anybody's got their thing going on, like, feel free to send me an email, and we could just have the occasional moment of getting people started. We could even have little, maybe we could do something like this, guys. We could have discussions where people who are starting their YouTube channel, someone like Stephen the Jupiterian here, anybody who wants to start getting onto YouTube, getting their face out there, we can make a large-scale Zoom meeting talking about a specific planet and have each person come on and talk for 5 minutes about a few specific things. And then that way, not only are we all getting used to doing the YouTube thing, we're all getting used to getting our mouth muscles moving and extracting data about a specific thing, a specific concept, whatever it is, but we'd all be doing it on my channel, and then I'd give everybody a step up. So let me know if that interests you, Stephen. Maybe I'll start putting out little videos mentioning that I want to do this kind of thing. We'll see how that goes. And yes, Irene, I love being able to move through this kind of stuff. Grounded Extracts, thank you for contributing. I love that. I'm sure I would love you with that Capricorn stellium of yours. Cancer rising, very cool. Cool. Our friend Grounded Extracts has also started making videos too. This felt like an auspicious year for creativity and alchemy. Oh shucks, Irene, I bet you'd still do well chatting online and talking with everybody about stuff. You've always got such good insights to talk about, and as well, you're hilarious. I bet you'd do great for YouTube. Because YouTube is all infotainment, baby. Information in an entertaining way. I think that's right up your alley, Irene, at least from what I've seen of you contributing on my channel. Irene has asked, what do I think about Sun-Mars conjunction in general? I actually have this conjunction in my very own chart. I wonder if I have my chart here. Probably not. If you were to look at my chart, you would see... I love you too, Irene. I have Sun, Mars, and really Pluto all conjunct in the sign of Scorpio in my 4th house. And, what I would really say about it is that the Sun and Mars conjunction is interesting because it is good for the Sun, because the Sun and Mars are friends, but they're both malefics. In particular, this can be great if the Sun and Mars are in the same sign, but Mars is not combust. My Mars is combust. So that does a little bit of damage to Mars. Can be quite a bit of damage, depending, especially if Mars is not in a good sign. Because my Mars and Sun are conjunct in Scorpio, that's Mars's personal sign. So Mars is in its own sign. It's kind of got a bit of it's got the strength to deal with the combustion. So when I was young, I used to get angry. I used to have a lot of blah. And I even didn't like transformation. I didn't like having to change. I resisted it. But Pluto came along and slugged me in the back of the head and said, no, you're going through it. You're not going to stay in one place. You are going to evolve, young man. Change. Get with it. And that was actually that was good for me. Having to go through that kind of change is tough. And the sun combusting any planet is going to it's going to agitate it, essentially. And it's going to agitate whatever that planet rules. For me, I'm a Scorpio rising. I'm a Leo rising. So Mars rules my 4th house and my 9th house. It's a very important planet. And both of those are agitated. Like, I want to have them strong. And to want to have something strong can bring, it's probably as strong as it can be right now. But you get frustrated that it's not stronger yet, that I don't feel happy yet. I want my life figured out. I want my 4th house figured out. I want my 9th house figured out. Now, eventually you lose, as time goes on, especially if you've got positive things in the chart, if you got a good Saturn, it's going to balance out that agitation with rest. And with, Saturn return has been the best thing in my life. It's really grounding everything that I've got going on, So there are different ways of dealing with every sign combustion or conjunction or difficulty. You've just got to find different ways of using your strengths to capitalize on mitigating your weaknesses. Stephen, the Jupiterian, has mentioned that a degree in theater education has helped with his shyness, and standing in front of a class and teaching would have helped too, for sure. And I'll tell you, man, starting a YouTube channel is a great way to tune into that confidence, to get used to flowing and moving with things, and to being able to stand in front of people and teach. The only way you're going to do it is by doing it. Thanks, you Witchcraft by Gabby Turner. I'd say that you picked that out pretty well. Mars and my Sun gives a sort of Aries vibe. And I've got my Mars return happening soon. And Mars in its own sign combust is certainly intense. Irene Mack is asking, on Synastry, didn't Carl Jung say someone's sun has to match their moon and vice versa to be like soulmates? That could be a thing, Irene. A lot of the stuff that Carl Jung did, he did great stuff. But I think the best of Carl Jung was usually working through, all things considered, he lived in the late 1800s, and a lot of the stuff that Carl Jung moved through was not necessarily grounded in he was a psychologist first and a astrologer second, and he made great contributions to how astrology can be merged with psychology. Every astrologer today is well served to see how Carl Jung's psychology fits as a base plate for astrological interpretation. But Carl Jung was not an expert astrologer. So a lot of the times, this is interesting. The idea that someone's sun has to match with the other person's moon and vice versa. Depending on what we mean by matching, it's like if I'm Scorpio sun, so I do well with people who have water moons. Right? Because that's the sun and the moon kind of in harmony there. Anybody with anything in water signs, I generally tend to vibe with them well there. Depending though, if somebody's got Saturn in a water sign, I'm sure my sun, if someone's got Saturn in Pisces like you guys are talking about, my sun can melt a little bit and be a little too intense to somebody's Saturn, because the sun and Saturn are enemies. That being said, all of this stuff needs to be taken in the whole in a synastry astrological reading, because sometimes the sun and Saturn in a synastry reading having any kind of interaction can be not necessarily so bad. Just like they say, the moon and Saturn can be not necessarily so bad. There's deep bonding that can happen there. So there's a lot there. There's a lot to synastry, and it's something I'm going to start getting into eventually. I'm Venus Atmakarika, so I know that synastry is calling me, folks. I want to have a good Vedic take on synastry and to be able to convey it to the Western world and do that sort of thing in the way that I do it, you know? So that's calling to me eventually, folks. Irene says, I have 8th house deep thinking water moon, but it's in Aquarius. You're years in and you still don't get it. Well, that just means that how you perceive your Aquarius moon is through the 8th house. It's still Aquarius moon, and the harmony that you portray with people is going to deal with the sign placement, essentially. If a person's sun is in an air sign, you're going to deal with them, and it's going to be an air sign interaction. But it's going to bring up 8th house moon transformative stuff for you. I do love Jules Mayberry, I think her name is, on YouTube. Her synastry stuff is definitely very good. But that's how I would say it, Irene. It's really as simple as that. You know, since you have the moon in the 8th house, you are going to have a deep moon. But it's really, that's not, people aren't perceiving your 8th house. They're seeing it and probably feeling it at some level. But it's like, we only really interact with each other's signs in synastry. We don't actually interact with each other's planets in their houses. Although, you know, if somebody else has a planet in Aquarius, you're going to experience it through your 8th house as well. If somebody's got Jupiter in Aquarius, you're experiencing it being conjunct your moon, which is a nice thing. And it would be in your 8th house. There'd be a deep, mystical, sexy, erotic connection possible there. Or, you know, just a joy in going into the depths of things. But it'd still be Jupiter and the moon in Aquarius, which is kind of social. It's kind of light. You'd probably talking and engaging in social games and even meeting at community meetings and building community meetings. You guys would find yourselves tapping into your 8th house and talking in a way that subtly gets at this erotic or possibly just soul depth, transformative connection, this fire between the two of you. Even though you're talking about it, you know, it's like you don't necessarily have to tap into it. I mean, unless you meet with the person and you guys feel like getting closer than just talking, it's going to open up 8th house energy. But it's going to be airy, it's going to be Aquarius in that way. Marcella Ramonette has Sun at Makaraka. Very cool. I love the Sun at Makaraka energy. I'm a Leo rising. The Sun at Makaraka can be intense, especially for women, but everybody can make it all blend. You know, I'm Venus at Makaraka, and I'm a man, and I have a very feminine energy, and anybody who deals with me gets it, and there's always people for me to love. There's always people for everybody to love, no matter what your astrological signs are. You know, humans are going to connect first, and astrology is going to be an afterthought. That's how the heart works, you know? Good. So, thank you everybody for coming back. I'm glad that we got to have a little conversation today. You know, I felt bad that I turned off the video just at the peak of our last video. But now I know for the future that sometimes my phone doesn't show the chat. So now I know to watch out for that. And I'm glad I did it in a video like this where we were just kind of shooting the shit. So thank you, everybody. Thank you so much to Irene, Marcella, Stephen the Jupiterian, Ballet. We had Witchcraft by Gabby Turner here, Grounded Extracts. Nice to see you on here. We also had Clara was hanging out with us, Marta Jonish. and all the folks that were hanging out with us today. It's been a real slice. Thank you very much to everybody for hanging out. Stay tuned. I'm going to start doing more stuff like this. Hi, Ruby Hind. Nice to see ya. I'm going to be doing more live streaming stuff like this. It's coming along. I feel, like I said, my North Node, the North Node is in Aries, and it's moving towards Capricorn. And that's where my North Node is. So that's okay, Ruby, my dear. We're going to be having more discussions like this eventually. So it was a pleasure connecting with you all. Expect it to happen more as time goes on. I'm Dustin Cormier. This is How to Rock Astrology. I hope everybody has an excellent day. The next thing I'm doing today, I'm going to hang out with Fiona Marks. She's been... excuse me. She's been doing a thing called Astro Jammin' on her channel. And everybody can join if they feel like it. We're going to be talking about Taylor Swift's chart. And I've never done one of these Astro Jams before. So wish me luck. Fiona Marks is the curator of Asheville Vedic Astrology now. So I can't wait to chat with her and see what it's all about. So lots of love, folks. I hope you enjoy.